Hi. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you to Adorama, of course, and Seth. I'm excited to be here. Really going to be focusing a lot on storytelling in small environments. Obviously, this is a small environment, so I'm going to be working with between 1 to 4 lights, playing with gels, color, especially since color is so big within my work. So yeah, what I'm going to show you is just some simple light setups that I often do, whether it's a small environment or it's a bigger environment. I do typically work in scenes where I've got a lot of the environment showing. So I'm talking about like spaces within the home, like the kitchen, living room, dining room. I like to include a lot of environment when I can. My studio that I also shoot in is kind of set up like, there's basically like scenes, you know, so like it's almost like a set. So it's only a 15 by 20, so a really humble space. But every wall is different. I've got like a blue wall with wallpaper and a green wall and a pink wall and furniture in there. And so again, it's kind of set up like a set. So I'm constantly, like, my work is looking like it's being shot within the home. So gear-wise, what I'm starting off with here, my main camera body is the Sony A1 II. And the lens that I'm going to be using here is the Sigma Art 50 millimeter 1.2 lens. That lens lives on my camera about like 85% of the time. I use the 50 a lot, and I love the 1.2, especially because obviously with that wide aperture, if I need to shoot wide or if I want to shoot wide, I can. I get that dreamy compression, bokeh, all of that, which is great. I also have the Sigma Art 35 millimeter 1.2 as well, and that is a great storytelling lens. So I use that lens heavily when I do want to include a lot of environment. I'm also working in a really tight space, a really cramped space. So lighting, now let's talk about that. The lights that I'm using, obviously Profoto lighting. So my go-to lights are the Profoto A2s. So you can see here, let's see if I can grab one of these. I don't know if I have an extra one out here. I don't think I do. So I'll just take this one off. But you could see it is small. Okay, so it's the size of like a soda can, but it's powerful. It's 100 watt. It's obviously not as powerful as like the B30s, which I also have. The B30s are 500 watt. B20s are 250 watt. I don't typically need that much power. So I'm usually using these A2s. They work great for me. It's enough power for me. And again, they're obviously small, easy to bring with. And then the Click soft boxes I use heavily as well. So the Click soft boxes work with the A series, Profoto A series lights. It's magnetic and obviously very magnetic. Again, really portable, so they just like collapse down. I can easily bring them in my luggage with me, which I do. So I use these heavily. There are 3 sizes for the Click soft boxes. There's the 2.7, 2.3, and the 2, and I use the 2.7 and the 2.3 the most. So the 2.7 is right here. That's my key light, going to be my key light. And then I'm using the 2.3, which is slightly smaller. That's going to be my fill. So again, these are the lights that I use most often. What I'm going to show you actually real quick too, while I have this off, is gels. So I use gels a lot. Let me see if I have that stack that I had earlier. Oh, tell her. Hi, Vanessa. So with the gels, I use these really heavily when I want to, just for a number of reasons. If I want to enhance mood, let's say I want to make it look like nighttime, I might pop a gel on my A2 and like bounce it off the ceiling and fill the space with a blue like color to make it look like nighttime. Again, it's all about kind of like enhancing the mood. If I want to mimic TV lighting, that would be another instance where I would want to maybe use a blue gel. Sometimes I use gels to enhance color. So An example would be, let's say I'm shooting against a pink wall and I really want to saturate that pink. Then what I do is put like a pink or a red gel right on the light. And then again, I would bounce it off the ceiling. My studio ceiling is white, so it's a great reflector. Bounce that off the ceiling, fill the space with like a red or pink color. That's going to saturate that pink wall and kind of fill the environment with a really warm feel. So again, it kind of all depends on mood for me. But when I'm working with, like, let's say I want to put the gel inside the soft box, then what I'm going to do, and what you want to do, is you just pop it on the inside like this, and then attach your lights. What you don't want to do is this, because I've done it. I've made this mistake, so I like to show people this. You don't want to put it on the outside like that, because your light will fall off that. So it goes on the inside. Everything is just so easy with Profoto. Like, it's seamless and really user-friendly, obviously. So this is another, way to do it. And I'm going to use gels both ways today. So I'm going to use them in the soft boxes, and I'm going to bounce them off the ceiling. Now the ceiling here is obviously higher, but it's white, and it'll work because I already tested it to make sure. So we are gonna be good with that. This is very casual. So, don't hesitate to ask questions if you have them while I'm even doing this. I'm an open book, and I'm happy to answer your questions. And then also, of course, I'll leave some time at the end, if you want to ask questions then too, that's fine. So I think let's go ahead and get started. This is our beautiful model, Giselle, right? Yes. Okay, and we're doing a 90s theme, if I haven't already said that. So she's dressed quintessential like 90s. And again, within my work, I love color, so I wanted a color pop. So chose this outfit. And then we have just some like minimal props that I could bring with, obviously flying here because I'm from Michigan. So what I'm gonna do, what I'm gonna start off with is just setting up my lighting the way I want it set up. So we're gonna start with the key, see what that looks like, and then go from there, okay? So this is my key light, my main light. If you're not familiar with what that means. And so this is going to be most likely like my strongest light. Right now it's set to 8. That's typically where I start with my keys. So point one would be the weakest, and then 10 would be the strongest strength. So I'm starting at 8 for my key. Now I don't have a grid on here yet, but I may end up adding one, and you're going to see why in just a second. So we start with just one light, go from there. So let's go ahead and get this all like connected and tethered here. Okay, great. Now, settings right now, starting off with 1/160 f9 aperture, and ISO is 400, and my Kelvin, it's at 5,800. I'm gonna leave it at that. Normal Kelvin for me is anywhere from 5,500 to 6,000, but it depends on the camera that I'm using. When I do shoot with my Canon, because I also shoot Canon, I typically have my Kelvin around 6,300. So I have my Sony lower. Okay, so we're gonna start off with just one light. Let's see. It is, there we go. Okay. All right. So right off the bat, we'll go back to the other one because I double shot there. You could see pretty good light already right off the bat. With just one light, we have good catch lights in the eyes. The closer this soft box is to her, the softer the light, the bigger the catch light. So I typically do like to have my soft boxes really close, my lights close to my subject because I gravitate towards soft light, but I also gravitate towards having really big catch lights in the eyes. The difference between an octa shape softbox and one that's rectangle, really the only difference, if they're similar in size, is just like the shape of the catch light. So do you prefer round versus like rectangle, which would mimic more of like a window, right? So I tend to gravitate towards having round. I typically don't just have one light though. So most of my images live with two lights. So I typically have a key and a fill. That's where they start. And then everything after that is just to kind of make the light more interesting. So my images live normally in a key light and a fill light, two lights. And then everything I add might be maybe to add an additional fill, so maybe a third light, maybe because I need more fill. Or it might be that I want to add some backlight, or I want to add like a fill with a gel, again, to make things a little bit more interesting and to enhance the mood. So let's add a fill. Now what this fill is going to do is it's going to soften the shadows here, because you can kind of see that the shadows are a bit dark and we have a little bit of like some clipped blacks in her hair. So we have a slight loss of detail there. And so what that fill will do is it's going to bring up the detail and the shadows. It's going to soften those shadows a little bit. It's also going to add a second catch light in her eyes, which I love. So I love to especially have both my softboxes next to each other because it creates two catch lights in the eyes, and it really just makes the eyes pop, which is typically the first thing we are looking at when we're looking at a portrait. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn this on. And this is at 8. So for this one, I am going to have that be 7. So I have it one stop lower typically. That's my starting point. And then I tweak from there. So I'm going to bring this like over here a little bit in front of her, just like that. And we're going to raise this just a little higher. Not much. Okay. And we'll see what that looks like. Move this out of the way. It helps if we aim this a little bit more towards you. Great. Okay. Firing twice there. All right, so now we can see it's a little bit too bright for my liking. So I want to maybe bring down the strength of the fill. But again, that's where I would typically start. So 8 and 7. So we're gonna make that adjustment here where we're gonna bring down the fill. Let's bring it down to like 6, okay? So now it's 2 stops below. I'm gonna bring this back just a little bit too, I think. I have a bazillion lights right here set up, feels like. So we'll bring this back just a little bit. And then I brought down the strength too as well. Great. All right, now let's take another shot. There we go. Oh, one more time. That was really crooked, but great. All right, so this is what I like to see. Now you can see that light is soft, it's directional. The shadows have been lifted, but they're still there, they're still existing, which is giving this portrait depth, it's giving it dimension, just a super simple light setup. And for me, this is a setup I would do for something like this, like a close-up portrait, but also just like in a big environment too. I would start here with just a simple key light, fill light, and then I might add another fill, bounce it like maybe off the ceiling to maybe lift the light in the entire environment. So if it was a bigger environment, that's one thing I would consider. Again, as I mentioned too, now we have 2 catch lights in the eyes as well, which is just making them really pop. So what's the purpose of moving the fill light back other than lowering the light level? So honestly, one of the reasons too is just to kind of get it out of my way. So it's not as close to her and I wanted to step back. So that's one of the reasons why I just moved it back. And then obviously lowered the level just because it was too bright. So really that was the only reason why I lowered or moved the light back. So let's make the light a little bit more interesting. I want to add some gels for this one. So we're going to use 1x3s. They are my favorite for like backlight, hair light, all of that. So take a look at these. I also love strips when I want to light a profile. So this is the 1x3. I've already put my gel and I'm going to use pink and blue for these. And I also want to darken the background too as well, because you could see in the original, there is a lot of light spill on the background, and that's not surprising given the fact that she's pretty close to the backdrop. I've got like this light, this fill aimed right at the backdrop, so it's pretty bright. So I want to darken that background a little bit more. So before I even add these backlights, because I have a pink and a blue, I am going to add a grid. And let's see, got the 2.7 here. So the grid is going to help with light spill. It's going to really darken that background. I like to have dark backgrounds because I like to isolate my subject, whether I'm working with a backdrop or I'm working in a bigger environment. So I'm going to bring this down real quick because I'm short and I can't reach the top of that. Okay. And you can see here, just Velcro's on is all. So this is going to help with light spill. It's going to darken that background, isolate my subject. Simple as that. So if you find that you have a hot spot on your wall that you want to like eliminate, you just add one of these guys. And I have them also for my 1x3 strips that I'm going to add. So we'll kind of find out if like I'm getting any light spill there. Okay. So let's add this back up. And bring that up. All right, so we should be good to go with that. So now we're gonna see this light too, by the way. You can see it's kind of off at a 45-degree angle, and this entire light is in front of her for a feathered light, basically. So what that means is like this whole thing is right in front of her. She's placed at the very edge. And again, this kind of just creates really soft lighting. So that's what I'm looking for with that. I might even bring that down just a little bit lower. And I have it nice and high too, because what I want to see is I want to see like shadows underneath her jawline to accentuate her jawline. So I place it nice and high so that we see that. All right, so I'm going to take another shot here again before I add these, and then I'm going to give her some props to use. Okay, so look right here. And again. All right, now you can see, like, look at the difference in the background and how much darker it is. That's what I want to see. So I love that dark background. She's really isolated. She really pops. So now let's make the light a little bit more interesting. Here's the thing with backlight. So when I add backlight in, the first thing I do, if I want to just do one backlight, I add first to the shadow side of her, because that's what's going to really, really pop. My key is over here on this side of her. I've got the fill lifting the shadows, lifting the detail in the shadows. Now let's add in this backlight on the shadow side of her. You're going to see a really strong, like beautiful pink that kind of goes all the way down her body. Again, that's what's so nice about the 1x3 strips. So I'm going to put this on here. Great. So this right now, it's at 7.7, not aimed at her. So you know what we're going to do? Put this as far back as we can get it. And then we're going to turn this a little bit. There we go. I might bring this down just a tad here. Giselle, I might have you like scoot forward just a tiny bit. Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, and I'm going to bring this even further back because it's kind of in my way. All right, there we go. And let's give this a shot. So we're going to see. I think that should hit you really nicely. So this is 8. This is 6. That's 7.7. We'll just see what that looks like. Perfect. Okay, so this is pretty bright. That's because my aperture changed. Let's do that one more time. All right, much better. So you can see we've got some pink there. It's kind of hitting her forehead a little bit though, which I don't love. So one thing I can do is I can move this light a little bit, but I could also add a grid to it as well, you know? So that's something to consider. I think I'm gonna do that because I really don't wanna I wanna make sure that there's no light hitting the backdrop, but I also don't want it to be hitting her forehead. So I'm gonna add a grid to this. All right, and I do use a lot of grids on my lights constantly because I'm always like, I don't know, trying to control and shape the light, and I don't like a lot of light spill. And that's one of the other reasons I'm working with a lot of small modifiers. I know that, you know, I could potentially just use one light with a really big modifier and diffuser. But the problem I have with that method is simply that I can't shape the light with that sort of like modifier as much as I can with smaller ones. So I tend to gravitate towards using multiple lights with smaller modifiers to shape the light. So if I have more than one subject, I'm typically using 2 keys, like I assign a key to each person, and then maybe one big fill, whether it's bouncing off the ceiling or, you know, on an umbrella. The nice thing about bouncing is if you're working in a really tight space, you're not going to take up a lot of space if you're bouncing a light off the ceiling, right? Instead of like having to work with a really big umbrella. So that's another thing I'm thinking about. Okay, so now we've got this. I'm going to raise this up just a little bit more. Not too much. Okay, let's take one more shot, and then I'm going to give you something, controller, maybe. Okay. Let's see. So not as much like light spill on her, but we are getting some on the backdrop right there. I think it is from what camera mode I am shooting in. So you mean like I'm in manual? That's, oh, I see what's happening here. So I'm shooting in manual. There we go. That's what was going on there. All right, perfect. So I could up the strength of that if I want to, and honestly, I think I do. Let's do, I don't know. Let's try 8.5. Right, look a little bit, Giselle, towards the, and then look at me with your eyes. Perfect. That's great light right there. So you could see that pink a lot more now. So that's what I want to see. And now I'm going to add some color contrast to that. And I'm going to give you something to kind of like hold here for fun. Why don't we do like the, I don't know. I'm going to have you like give me like a deadpan stare. Here, hold the Nintendo controller. And I'm going to add in this other blue light, and then we'll have you pose. And I'm going to have you, when you hold that controller, I need you to kind of tilt it towards me a little bit so that I can see it. Otherwise, it won't look like a controller. Okay. I don't want to hit you. Thank you. It's like a workout. Who needs to go to the gym when you have to do this all day? All right. So I'll probably add another grid to this. Now this one is not going to be as bright because it's on the key side of her. So that's the thing I'm thinking about. So with it being on the key side, which is where the light's kind of coming from, I need to consider having the strength of that light be stronger than this one. It's gonna pop less. Let's also add a grid to this. So I think I have, what do I have that one at? I have it at 8.5. So I probably need this one at like 9 or 9.5. So yeah, keep asking questions if you want in the chat. I'm happy to answer them. Does anybody have questions here so far? Okay. No questions. What is this? This is brand new. And it looks, hey, Eric, do you have I don't know if Eric can hear me. This is the wrong grid. Do you happen to have, this is 2.7. I need the 1x3. Do you have that? For me, you have it? All of a sudden, I'm like, this isn't the right shape.
Here you go. How about
Thank
this?
you. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Let's look at that.
I think it is. I think you're good. Thank you so much. All right, so now we got it. All right, so again, grids are just so huge. Like whenever I have questions about like, I'm getting a lot of light spill, why is my background really bright? I'm like, the first thing I say is always to add a grid. The other things to consider, moving your light away from the background, pulling that light away from the background is also going to darken your background. I'm so short, you guys, I have to bring this way down. There we go. And then the other thing too that you could consider doing is just obviously not pointing your light at the background. So you can see my light here is not pointed at the background. It's feathered in front of her. So if I were to turn this, like the fill, this key towards the background, then I would be getting a hot spot on the background. So that's another thing you just want to keep in mind when you're doing this. If you want a dark background and you're noticing, I'm getting a hot spot. Why am I getting a hot spot? Try all of those things. Question.
How do you determine the power setting of your light?
You know what? I feel like I've been doing this for so long that I just know what my starting point typically is. So it is very normal for me to start with my key being at 8 because I'm using like typically the same lights, modifiers that, you know, I'm using here that you see today. So just from, I think, experience and practice, that's what I know to start out with. Now, if I am shooting in an environment that's not very controlled, like I'm shooting in a studio, I'm shooting in with, you know, within the home, I'm not like combating against like strong ambient light. But what if I'm outside and working with a lot of ambient light? Then that changes things. And honestly, if I'm outside, I'm probably not using my A2s at that point. I'm probably using a B20, which is 250 watt, or a B30, which is 500 watt, because I'm gonna need that power, especially when I'm, you know, working against the sun. So that changes things. Again, those lights are so much stronger. I never have them maxed out. So I'm never, you know, if I have my B30, I'm never like having it at like even 9 or 10. It's usually starting point 7, 8 maybe. And looking at your Instagram, what do you use for inspiration for your images, movies, music? Thank you, appreciate it. So all of the above. So I pull inspiration. I think the number one place I pull inspiration from is just everyday like moments that happen, that actually physically happen with my family. You know, I see something happen, I'm like, this is a great idea for a portrait. I'm not a documentary shooter, I'm a portrait photographer. So for me, it's not shooting on the fly. It's more of like pulling that inspiration and then creating a whole scene. And part of the magic for me is setting up the scene. So I like to come up with a concept. I like to style, come up with a color palette. And then the shooting process is really short, just a few minutes. And then the editing process can take, you know, a couple of hours as well. So it's kind of all of those things mixed together. It's an entire process, but I'm pulling inspiration from like my everyday life, but then also films, paintings, other art forms, other art mediums. It's all across the board. In general tips, if your subject is a bit on the shorter side, but you don't want them to seem really short in your photos. Okay, great question. And honestly, what I would do is consider shooting like on the low side. So making them look taller by either shooting at eye level or even lower, make them, you know, look, you know, bigger than they really are. I do that with kids all the time. Sometimes I shoot the opposite and shoot kind of slightly above them when I want to make them look really small. So if I want them to look really tiny, I consider like getting higher than them. So, you know, that would be the opposite of that. So that would be my biggest tip, is consider getting like lower than your subject to make them look taller. And last question here before I photograph this one. Do you use light meters at all? I don't yet, but I did just get the data color light meter, which I believe is fairly new, and I'm excited to try and use that. So I haven't yet, but that is something I'm going to be using. And then we'll do one more here. What if the backdrop is white? Should we start with the power settings on low? It is really not about that. It's actually the opposite of that. I would consider doing the opposite of that. So if your background is white, I have this in my house. To make that background nice and dark, if you want to make it dark, let's say that's what your end goal is, if it's white and you want to make it dark. I'm assuming that's where that question's going. I would have your light actually be really strong. And then pull your light and your subject away from the wall, and then don't aim your light at the wall. You will make your background really dark just by doing those things. So something to consider there. I have that question like asked all the time because people are like, my whole house is like all white. How do I work with that? You know, how do I darken that? So great question. Thank you for asking. Let's see what this blue looks like. And can you hold the controller again? Just tilt it kind of, yeah, just like that. Bring it up a little bit. Yes. I know that feels awkward, but it doesn't look awkward. And I want you to give me kind of like, what was that?
No, I was going to say, do you want me to look at you? Or like
Yeah, I want you to look right at me and give me kind of like a deadpan stare. Like you've been staring at the Nintendo for a while, okay? So here's the thing. The blue isn't really shining here. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring down my key a little bit. We're going to do like 7.5 to kind of lower the light. And I'm going to max it out to like 10 here. I'm also going to bring down my fill even a little bit more. I want things to be kind of moody. So let's take another shot and see where we land. Another deadpan stare. That's perfect. Could not be any better. Okay, there we go. That's what I want to see. Now, a lot of it's falling on her face, some of that blue. So it's honestly just an adjustment to kind of like move the light a little bit. If I don't want some of that blue hitting her face. I will say this with gels, I want to see that color. Like, I like to have skin tone be neutral in most cases. So you could see this white light, the key, that's my main light source. That's overpowering the gels like on the front of her face. So we have some white light on the front of her face because that's the strongest light. But those gels are filling color in like the shadow areas of her. You can kind of see that here. So I like to see the gels on the skin a little bit, but maybe not that much. So I'm gonna just kind of shift this kind of more behind her, just a tiny bit. It's just kind of a micro adjustment. Now, here's the other tip I want to leave you with. When you need to adjust your light, you notice like something's wrong, do one thing at a time. Don't do multiple things. So make a micro adjustment. So you feel like something's off, make one adjustment, take a shot, test it out, see what it looks like, and then make another micro adjustment. So that's the tip but one of the best tips I can give you. I personally can get really overwhelmed if I make too many adjustments at one time. So I just do baby steps here. So we're gonna try this again. Another deadpan stare. Perfect. And light didn't go off. We'll do that again. The key didn't go off there. Now it did. Okay. So you can see there, you can see a little bit of my light, not a big deal, but I could move it back just a tiny bit so it's not in the shot. I will sometimes edit out my lights in my shot. So I don't have a problem with my lights kind of showing in my shots. I try not to do that because it can be a pain, obviously, to like edit that out, right? But there are some instances where I have to have the light in, and so I just try not to have the full thing if possible. So if a little bit of the softbox is showing, it's not a big deal. Let's do this shot one more time, and I'm gonna actually up this pink a little bit more. I wanna see a little bit more color. Right, you're rocking the deadpan stare. Have your mouth open just a little bit more. Yep, perfect. Yeah, that's good. So I love that color combo. So when I'm doing gels, also I like to have like color contrast. So I will do colors that are like opposite of each other. So, you know, that could be like complementary colors. It could just be like a cool and a warm tone. This would be an example of that, where I've got a cool and a warm tone. Are there any questions so far on like this setup here? Simple setup, yeah. Stack gels, absolutely. Yeah, that's such a great question. So I do have some gels where I'm not, like I want to use them, but I'm not getting enough color. And a perfect example of that, there's a Profoto like lavender color. And that lavender, like if I want a purple fill in general, it's really awesome, but it doesn't give me much. So what I like to do to saturate that a little bit more and then also kind of shift the color a little bit is maybe add a pink with it. It's gonna make that lavender a little bit warmer, of course. It's gonna change the color, but I will stack gels sometimes to saturate a color a little bit more or just to create like more of like a custom color. I do that. Another example would be like, let's say you wanna create a nighttime fill. Maybe you add like a blue and a purple gel together and bounce it off the ceiling and fill the space with, you know, that color. So that's another thing to kind of consider. Let's do just a couple more with like different props. And then we're gonna get to the blinds shot, which I really wanna get to. I'm gonna show you guys, this is the blinds here, as you can see, they're white. And I'm not gonna make them white, I'm gonna make them blue. So that'll be the next thing we do. Let's just change the prop just for funsies. So, because I've got all these like random fun 90s props. You know, I haven't put batteries in it, but I need to because I need to see if it works. I have like Mario Kart in there too, which is like the best. So it needs to happen. So for this one, I don't want to see the back of the Game Boy is the problem. So I think this is one where we really need to have you turn more. So let's have you do that. And I will actually bring this over more for like a profile shot. I'm gonna actually have you kind of look down at the Game Boy. So let's see what that looks like first. And I'm gonna just pull your hair back just a tiny bit. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. Turn a little bit towards me, just a little bit. Yeah, that's perfect. And now look down, yep, just like that. Great. Okay, so let's make this more moody than that, because that's not enough. So my fill is at 5.5. I'm gonna bring that down to like 4.5. My key is at 7.2, so I'm gonna bring that down. Let's bring it down to 6. I feel like with these profile shots too, I think you can get just a little bit more creative with your lighting and a little bit more moody. There we go. So, and I can keep playing with this. So like that blue is really strong. It's too strong for my liking. So I could bring that down to like 8.5 because it was maxed out at 10. But look at that pink. I love how that pink is falling in her hair. Let's do it one more time. Can you bring the Game Boy a little bit closer to you so that like to your face? Yeah, I know it feels awkward. Yep. And angle it a little bit more towards me. You're perfect. There we go. Okay. So that's the kind of color that I want to see. That looks great. Now, there are instances to, like, let's say the Game Boy was working and I use these strobes. One of the things that kind of happens is that something like the Game Boy or like TV lighting or a lamp or an oven light that you might have in your shot, again, just thinking about working in big environments. When working with strobes, a lot of times they will overpower that practical lighting is what it's called. So what I'll do is I'll bring in lights, motivated lighting to mimic that light. Okay, so if I have a TV or I have a lamp would be a perfect example. So let's say there's a lamp like right here behind her, and it's on, but when I'm photographing her, that lamp doesn't really look like it's on. There's not a beautiful like warm glow. I could turn the power of my lights down, but I typically don't want to do that because I have an aperture of anywhere from f8 to f10 because I want everything to be kind of sharp in my environment. So what I do instead of changing power and settings is I bring in a light with a CTO gel. because lamplight is really warm. That's gonna mimic that warm light, and it's gonna create this beautiful warm glow. Maybe some of that warm light's gonna fall on her backside, and it's just gonna mimic that lamplight, and it's gonna enhance the mood overall. So those are also things I'm thinking about. Again, I always start out simple with just a key and a fill, and then I build from there, and I take my time, and I start simple, and then I'm like, okay, let's make the light interesting. Let's add in maybe a third or a fourth light. I know it's not always feasible or practical to have that many lights, so I do understand that, but I think that you can get really creative with just 2 to 3 lights and some modifiers. Like most of my images, my favorite images, live with just 2 to 3 lights only. That's it. Just with playing with different modifiers and gels. So let's get this other shot. So I'm gonna have you stand up here. We're gonna have you stand for this next one. And I'm going to completely change the light setup for this. So this is where we're gonna bounce the lights. So let's start here. I am going to use, again, both the pink and blue gel. So the blue gel that I'm using is the peacock blue. It's kind of like a cyan color, which I really love and gravitate towards within my work. These are the blinds. They're super cheap, guys. I think they're like 10, 12 bucks. I've already broken them intentionally, and I'll show you why in a minute. I'm gonna have her kind of like peek through this. I think I've got enough space here. Okay, so we're gonna do that. Now I'm gonna bring this up just a little bit. You're about my height. I think that's good. So what I did here, I need her to peek through the blinds, so I cut like the middle section so that she could pull that down so I can see her face. So that's like my first step here. I'm gonna move this over here. So this is gonna have, here's what I wanna do. I'm gonna have a key light on her from behind. So I'm still gonna use that 2.7, that Profoto A2 and the 2.7. If I can get it out of here. That'll be my keys still, and I'm gonna have a grid on this too still. I'm gonna keep all that on just because, thank you. I've got a lot of crap around here. Like I've got all my 90s props and cords, which is authentic because the 90s were messy and there was cords everywhere. You know, that's authentic in itself, thank you. But I wanna keep this grid on because I do not want light spill on that backdrop, okay? So I'm gonna actually just bring the blinds a little bit more forward. All right. So I need to bring this now that she's standing up a little bit higher, again, because I want to see that nice shadow underneath the jawline. Now, Giselle, when you're standing here like this, I might need to lower the blinds a little bit. I want you to stand kind of a little bit back. Further back you are, the more we can see your face, okay? But you kind of need to be a little bit angled towards this light too as well. I'm gonna actually move this back just a tiny bit. Okay. So, yeah, you are really kind of perfect where you are right now. And then I need you to just kind of look in the direction of the light. So let's start right now with just the key and we'll go from there, okay? So we haven't changed, we haven't added the gels or anything like that to the lights. So we're just working with one light right now so I can make sure that my key is where I want it to be. Okay. And question, when you go somewhere to shoot someone's house or workplace, how long does it take you to set up and be ready for what you intend to do there? Great question. It depends. So like a client's house, I like to go there, kind of like look at the environment, look at the different spaces. You know, the perfect example would be like, let's say I need to shoot in a nursery. It's gonna take me maybe like 30 minutes to set up my lights, kind of style the room a little bit. So one of the things I like to do is I do like to add some messes to the shot. So I'll put some toys on the floor, some books on the floor. layer my lights. I do keep things a little bit more simple in those type of environments, like when I'm going into a client's home versus like at home when I'm playing and experimenting. Like it could start really simple and then I could get really creative because I have a little bit more flexibility there and no time constraints versus like at a client's house. So most of my shots at like a client's house will live, again, 2 to 3 lights only. And it's very common for me to have that only take like 30 minutes. Now, if I'm at home, it could be anywhere from like 1 to 3 hours for styling and setting up. So that includes, 1 to 3 hours includes styling the scene, setting up my lights, and shooting. So 1 to 3 hours. Sometimes it takes as much as 4 hours, but that's pretty rare. So that would be common for me. All right, so let's see here. Why don't you look through the shot, just like that, perfect. Now, here's the thing. This line is cutting through your face. So what I want you to do is kind of like right there. Yep, and then look towards the light a little bit. And then look towards me. Actually, come back this way. I like it right there. Yep, perfect. Okay. And look at me with your eyes. Perfect. Okay. So you can see now just one light. She's looking through the blinds. Already, I kind of like this. Like already, it's great, but I want to add some color to this, and it is a bit dark. So one of the other things I can do, I like the mood. I like it to be kind of moody, but we can add like, I don't know, like let's try 7. I think we're at 6.5, so let's do 7. Great. That's perfect. Oops, didn't mean to do 2 there. Okay, that looks really good. So that's where I want my key to be, something along those lines. But I want to add in some color, so let's add in some color. So what I'm going to do now is add some fills in. I want to make these white blinds blue, so that's what I'm going to do next here. And I'm going to add a blue gel to this, which is right in here. Now, one of the cool modifiers, let's see, we have it, we do. Okay, this is the Magnum. So this is the Click Magnum, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna aim this light up to the ceiling, bounce it off the ceiling, fill the space with blue. But if I need more power, one of the things I can use is this Magnum. And this Magnum, you can see, has like what, like a silver metal like finish in here. So it's gonna up the strength of your light. It's supposed to up it by like 1.7 stops, but it can maybe like a stop, basically up the strength of your light. So if you're like maxed out, you need more power, this is your friend. So we're gonna try it without the Magnum because maybe we don't need it, I don't know. We'll just see what that looks like. And I'm gonna have this be pretty strong. We're gonna have this be like, I don't know, 9.5, so almost maxed out. Any questions on this right now? Let's see. Do you ever do a mobile visual of a client's home space, like virtual VO, to see if the space is good enough before booking your appointment? Yes, if I have to. But typically I would like to go there physically, but it doesn't always, of course, work out that way. So, you know. I also do that with wardrobe. So I will do like Zoom chats or whatever I need to do with a client beforehand to help them with wardrobe as well. Because one of the reasons they're probably booking me is for my use of color. And so for someone who isn't maybe artistic, it can be really hard to come up with like a color palette. And when I'm photographing a family or whatever, I like to see a lot of color. And I don't like to see everybody in one color or even two colors. I like to see like multiple colors, multiple patterns, and that can be really, really hard if someone isn't artistic, can't see color that way. So I like to help with that too. All right, so we're gonna see if the blind color changes here. So that's perfect. Okay, so go ahead and look at me with your eyes. Okay, so now look at the difference that that has made. Now it's made it really blue, kind of like nighttime. And you can see there is some blue that's falling on her face, but typically only like the shadow side of her face, because that's where the white light, the key light, is not hitting her face, okay? But you can see where the white light is overpowering that blue is on the left side of her face. let's make this a little bit more interesting. Let's add in some more colors. So we're gonna add in pink now to the back. Again, these are like contrasting colors. And let's just bounce this off the ceiling as well. So let's see, bring this up. And I kind of want to make this background nice and dark, or I'm sorry, nice and pink, not dark. So right now we're at like 8.8 for this one. I think it needs to be a little bit stronger. We'll try it out, see what that looks like. I think it needs to go even higher than that, but we'll see. Okay. So that one is at 8 point. Let's bring it to like 9.5 and see what happens. And then that one, we're gonna bring to 9, okay? Great, look towards me. Okay, so now we're getting some color contrast there. I could play with the colors a little bit here, make things a little bit stronger in certain areas. Like I could bring down my key just a little bit. Maybe do like, I don't know, 6.5. Let's try that. Just so I could see more saturated color. And then I'm gonna also bring up my Kelvin. I wanna make things a little bit warmer as well. So I'm at 5,800, but let's do like, I don't know, 6,200. I'm gonna give you that Walkman in a minute too. Can you back up just a tiny bit, like further away? Yeah, perfect. That's great. There we go. So the color's a little bit more saturated there. That's kind of what I'm wanting to see. I like the blue and the pink together. Are there any questions on that? It's really, when you're playing with gels and you're bouncing lights and everything, it's just a balancing act. That's all it is. When I am setting something like this up, it's not like an immediate thing. Like sometimes I nail the settings, the shot, all the modifiers right away, and sometimes I don't. And sometimes I'm tweaking things, adjusting like the power of the lights. That's really it. So let's add in a little bit more story to this. So the Walkman, I don't know if we'll see it. We're gonna try. Obviously this is like a close-up portrait, but it matches your outfit like perfectly with the pink headphones. Yeah, why not wear them? Because I don't think we're seeing your neckline. Yeah. So I think it's better to like, and then hold that guy. I don't know if this works either. We don't have batteries in it, but maybe. Okay. And then some questions on this. Let's see. Would you recommend using pure white blinds? I was given some that are almond colored. So that would be interesting. The almond color is probably gonna be a little bit warmer, right? So I would say that if you're using a cool color, that may be a little tricky. So if you're using like a blue gel, you wanna make them blue, because the blinds are almond, they're a little bit of a warmer color, that's gonna be harder to shift that to blue because it's a warmer color. It's picking up like more yellows and stuff. So if you wanted to shift it to like something really warm, like pink or red, like change the color of the blinds, really easy to do if it was that color. So it just kind of depends. But you could do it, again, it's, you know, if you wanted to make it blue, just some things to consider, upping the strength of the light, the power of the light. Next question here, how much do you charge and what is the deliverable? So that depends. But for a client session, my package is $1,750. And that includes 25 images, so I don't give them a lot of images because there's a lot of setup and editing involved. But they also get like a photo album as well with their package. Now, if I have to travel to that location, then that's a different story. But my base package starts at like $1,750, and then it goes up from there, depending on what they want. I typically don't book locally because I live in a remote area. And most people aren't going to be paying that. So I wouldn't be booking locally. And so I'd have to like add in things like flight, hotel, all that kind of stuff. Have you ever faced any issues with colors during an outdoor shoot, especially when using creative color gels? Not really. So I do use my gels outside. So one way that I've utilized gels outside is shooting through a window, like photographing my subject through a window. And I want to make it look like nighttime. So I use my lights with like a blue gel to make it look like nighttime just by aiming that light right at like the house or the barn or whatever I'm shooting through. I guess the biggest issue that I have come across is just time of day. So if it's like the middle of the day where it's really sunny, that's where it can get really tricky because you typically, of course, need a lot of power at that point. So like my A2s would not cut it there. I would need like a B30, which is 500 watt, in order to overpower that ambient light. So I think that's like the biggest issue that I face. Okay, so let's do this real quick. I don't know if there's more questions. I'll answer those in just a second. Okay, so can you do the same thing? Hold the blinds down just like that. You don't have to hold the Walkman up. We just kind of need to see the headphones just like that. That's great. Perfect. There we go. I love how that looks. There's not a ton of light in her eyes, so that's one thing I could just be conscious of is like maybe having her like look a little bit more towards the key light. Why don't you actually do that? Look that way, that's perfect. There. And now we're getting more light in her eyes. It looks like it focused on her hand there though. We're gonna do that one again. There we go. Perfect. Perfect. That's what I want to see. So simple as that. What other questions do we have here? No, do not. I don't know if I answered that one earlier, but you might not have been here, Katie. I don't use a light meter at this time, but I did just get one from Data Color that I'm planning on using. So not yet. Would it be better to hit the background with gel versus bouncing it off the ceiling? Okay, you can definitely do this, but here's the thing. Once you bounce a gel off the backdrop, what's gonna happen is you're gonna get a hot spot, right? So you're going to get a really bright area and the gradient. That is totally fine if that's what you're aiming for. In most cases, I'm not aiming for that. I have done that. Again, only when I really want kind of like a gradient and kind of a bright spot, like maybe directly behind my subject. Most cases, I want just to kind of fill the space with a color. So I'm bouncing off the ceiling if I can. If you don't have a white ceiling, maybe you have a white wall. Maybe you don't have a white wall. Maybe you have like a reflector that you can bounce off instead. And it could be anything, you know, that's white, really. What is another method if you don't have a ceiling to bounce the light off? I just answered that. I didn't even read that question, and I like I mentally knew. So yeah, there's other things you can use. So if you don't have a white ceiling, you have a white wall, great. A reflector would work. V-flat, of course. Even like a white sheet, if it's not like, you know, translucent, like maybe you could like double it up or whatever. I have used a white sheet before. I do not care if my method is janky, as long as the end result is what I'm hoping for. As long as the end result is good, that's all that matters. So that answers like the next two questions. So is it a real album with genuine prints or a selection of computer files? It is a real album with genuine prints. So by Miller's. I use the Miller's signature album. Again, I'm not giving my clients a whole lot of images, so I think in my contract it's just 20 images. I usually give them a little bit more than that. So it's not a ton, but it is their prints from their session. So with that said, I think we're running close to out of time. I want to answer some questions here. Yeah.
So for image 64, 65, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll go back to that. Remember if you had light set up in the back of you? My question is, okay, yes, the ISO was 400. So I was asking, how did you make the sheets very dark? You just added just the lights and the key light, and that was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just the key light there. So that was simply it, just one light setup. And honestly, I love that. Like, I love the way that looks too, even without the gels. Yeah. Like, it was the simplest setup. And these are like $10, $12 blinds. I mean, and they're like clamped to a C-stand. Like, there's nothing fancy about that, but the end result is kind of cool. Yeah. I know, it's fun to play with, things of that nature. So I know we're running out of time. Last question. Yeah.
Okay, you do a lot of self-portraits.
Yeah.
What additional gear would you use to do something like this?
Yeah. So self-portraiture, tripod, always. Like that's going to make your life so much easier. The Cam Ranger as well is a great remote to use when you need to stand in place, pose. Cam Ranger is going to allow you to also do the interval timer as well versus like some of the brand apps like the Canon Connect or whatever, the Sony app. You can't always use like the interval timer with that. So the Cam Ranger is going to allow you to do that, focus and shoot wherever you're standing. So tripod and that. Constant light is also big because when you have like consistent lighting that's not changing like strobes or whatever, that can be great, especially when you're needing to do like composite work versus like relying on natural light. So that's also something I'm thinking about because I do a lot of composite work. So yeah. Do I have time to answer one more question? Yeah, go ahead. Okay. So, oh yes, and yeah.
Okay. How long is your photo session?
My photo sessions, so my photo shoots that I'm doing personally can be, like when I'm actually physically shooting, it's like 5 minutes, 10 minutes max. It's not very long. If you're working with children, it is super important that it's quick. Super important. So if I'm bringing a child into the scene, my scene is ready. My lighting is ready. My settings are where they need to be, and I bring them in. It's just a few minutes because that's usually all I have, especially if they're a toddler.
Because you mentioned $1,700 for a session.
Yeah. So client sessions are different. So client sessions, like I could be there easily for like a few hours at least, and setting up. I typically like to shoot my clients in their spaces. So like in the nursery, in the kitchen. So yeah, this would be like with clients and everything. So yeah. So it kind of depends on the situation. So do many people request setups involving blinds or prop, or is this just for commercial purposes? No, this isn't like something that like typically people are like requesting. It's just kind of something fun to do. Like I cannot emphasize enough how important as a photographer it is to play and experiment. So in between like maybe your bookings and your client sessions, to be experimenting, because you're going to grow as a photographer when you do that, like playing with new lighting setups, new techniques, because it could involve, like, let's say you go to a client's home and you photograph the client like through one of their windows. I've done it. So that's something that you could do and utilize like outside of like practicing within your studio or at home. With that said, thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you to our model. She's amazing. So, and thank you, of course, to Adorama for being here. Eric is in the back. So he's the light guy. He's got all the lights that I used here today. And I'm going to be here if you guys have questions. So thank you again. Appreciate it. Thank you.